Jules, I suspect we won't be speaking about Erik ten Hag for a while.
No.
So this
he
is...
didn't say goodbye because the players had the day off. So there was only a couple of them, I think, at Carrington. So he left. I mean, I guess he didn't have to leave so quickly. He left on Monday afternoon.
They reportedly, they arranged a private jet to take him back to Amsterdam. Which,
but like, if you want to stay a bit longer in Manchester, you can say, like, I don't want to go back now. You know, I can stay. And
I think he wanted to be back in time for the big Feyenoord against Ajax Klassieker. How about that? No. And by the way, shout out to Ajax. Who won that game?
Who won?
I find this whole thing odd. In the sense that obviously it was coming for a very, very long time. It's funny because a lot of the coverage that I read made it a point to say that, well, Omar Barada and Dan Ashworth weren't at the club when it was decided to extend Ten Hag's contract in the summer. And I'm kind of like, really? Maybe they weren't formally employed by the club, and obviously they don't want to violate the rule of their contract.
Yeah.
But I 1,000% refuse to believe that Jim Ratcliffe, his friend Brailsford, and whatever, all these guys decide, hey, let's commit another 2 years to Erik ten Hag because we don't like the alternatives, without consulting Barada and Ashworth, right? You don't have to put it on paper. You know, you can use carrier pigeons. Guys, what do you think?
I know.
Nobody believes this. You don't believe this, do you?
No. And all the managers they met in the summer, there's no way Barada and Ashworth were not either involved in those talks, in the meetings, or certainly aware that, hey, we're going to speak to Tuchel, we're going to speak to Thomas Frank, we're going to speak to so and so.
I mean, I think being directly involved, because obviously they've got a compensation claim with Ashworth. They would have had, I guess Barada would have been on gardening leave from Manchester City, and you don't want to risk any legal issues there, especially because Manchester City, as we know, have some very aggressive lawyers. But so maybe in terms of a face-to-face meeting, somebody can snap a picture. No, that would not be good, right? But yeah, there's no question to me that I just refuse to believe that they weren't part of the conversation.
No.
And what surprises me here is, and I want to spin it over to Ratcliffe. Okay, so the clock is ticking on him, right? Because he has a time window where he's in charge of the sporting side of the club. He has tried to aggressively cut costs, the 250 people laid off, the no more £2 million a year for Sir Alex, and so on.
So, they saved around 30 million. This whole thing is costing them 25. So all the cost cutting that they've made.
I was curious about that 30 million because one of there's a guy I follow on social media who has worked, he's sort of into the accountant business types guy, Stefan. He disputes that 30 million number.
So it's probably less, you mean?
Yeah.
Right,
just simply because those 250 people that they fired, it's not like it's 250 Harry Maguires.
Yeah,
it's,
true.
Although obviously they would have saved themselves quite a bit of money on Sir Alex. For somebody who's so careful with money, it seems, and who says, we want to reinvest every penny in the squad, it's an interesting situation. And I'm wondering about this from the Glazers' perspective, right? Because for every 10 million that Manchester United spend, the Glazers have to put in about 7.3 million of that, right? Any losses that they make, the Glazers are funding those losses, beyond, obviously they got money when he bought his share of the club. So I think they'll be watching this very, very carefully. He's decided to go and pay a bunch of high-priced executives, in the guys we mentioned, Ashworth, Barada, Jean-Claude Blanc, Wilcox. I'm assuming Brailsford has joined the job for free because he gets enough money from INEOS already.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I know we've been critical and stuff, but this is the right choice. This is, finally, you have to have people who work at a club who make football decisions for the medium-term good of the club. Yeah. Clubs work when you have a manager who inevitably thinks short-term, and you have executives who think medium-term and long-term.
Yeah.
We're in agreement on this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And before somebody pops up on social media, they will, and they'll say, oh, but Sir Alex made all his own moves and blah, blah, blah. He had total control. Like, Sir Alex is a one-off. Also, that was a different era at the start.
Yeah.
By the end, Sir Alex became Sir Alex, right? He wasn't Sir Alex when he started.
No.
And you can make the same point for the Arsene Wenger David Dean thing, right?
Yeah.
And Wenger, by the way, for all his ills and wackiness, he always worked within a budget.
Yeah.
So at United, I think one of the horrible mistakes that was made is every manager they've had. Oh, what do you want? You want Marwan Fellaini? Here you go, Davy Moyes. You know what? Let's make sure that we buy him later so we can pay more money for him. Mourinho, you want this one and that one and that one, and we'll get Uncle George in the room? Sure. And then with Ten Hag, it became an absurdity where he and his friend Case Foss
and his son.
And his son, Nigel. Nigel, what a name. Getting to this point where they sign all the same types of profiles of players. This won't happen. There has to be, for this to go forward, has to be accountability.
Yeah.
Wilcox, the analytics nerds, Barada does the negotiation, Ashworth has the big picture, Brailsford chimes in with his marginal gains, Ratcliffe says, let's do this, and then the Glazers write the check.
It does feel like a much better structured club right now. And I know it's only the beginning of this process and this new era in a way, but it feels certainly much more structured, balanced, competent than anything we'd seen before. Even the Sir Alex, as you said, David Gill era was just old school English football, really, let's be honest. Now it certainly looks much more efficient. Will it work? I don't know. It seems that United is such a special club that I'm not sure if even that works. But if that doesn't work, then I don't know where they go, because that has to work.
I had the privilege with sitting down several times with Sir Alex once, towards the end of his career, where he talked about how kind of the last 10 years of his time at Manchester United, he wasn't really coaching in the sense, it wasn't really taking training rather, right? He'd be at training, he'd let other people run the training, he'd watch, and he devoted a lot of his energy to recruitment, to speaking. So he was kind of like as much a director of football at that point. He had his trusted scouts and people who came to him. And I'm sure, look, he's Sir Alex, right? So everybody was kissing his butt at the time, right? Yeah. Which probably made things easier. Still had to make the tough decisions. So he wasn't this dude behind us, if you're watching on video, Ruben Amorim, who we assume, or indeed Ten Hag, will be doing 2-a-days, 3-a-days, and working in the video editing and stuff like that. So I think we have to also understand that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the good news if you're a United fan. In terms of what to expect from Amorim, and again, he's not been appointed yet. Our latest information is that the club, Sporting, who are, because they're listed on the stock exchange, they have to be transparent about this.
Yeah.
They have, I think on Tuesday night, they announced that, the clause is there and it's been activated, that there's a notice period. As we record this on Thursday morning, correct me if I'm wrong here, you may have more up-to-date information. United still need to reach a deal with Amorim. That's not done yet. On top of that, Sporting are insisting that Amorim serves a notice period.
Yeah, 30 days. That's the...
Now, this notice period to me seems a little bit petty. Like, it doesn't make any sense why you would want somebody coaching your team in these games when he's leaving.
No, I guess to prepare for who's coming next, maybe, and they're very likely going to appoint the reserve coach. So maybe it's just buying you a bit more time. Maybe it doesn't have to be 30 days. Maybe it just could be the most imminent game. So, for example, they play City next week in the Champions League. I would rather have him on the bench against City than have the reserve coach that is just coming in and has no experience of Champions League football. And not that he has much, but he still has more than somebody who has zero. So maybe that's what they have in the back of their mind.
Amorim was also linked to Manchester City, who you brought up. That was because he works, still works, he's still there. Ugo Viana at Sporting. Ugo Viana is going to become the director of football at City next year when Chiki Begiristain leaves. Immediately, kind of the City sphere already letting it known, like, well, no, we don't. Amorim's very good, but we didn't, never really interested in him because
Pepe's going to stay. Well, you don't know.
No, it's not the best. Well, first of all, I think they want to keep the door open for Pep deciding to stay. But also, they said, we don't have a squad that's suited to his football. And you mentioned this rigidity of the 3-4-3. I'm hesitant to use the word rigidity because he's a young coach. Just because he's done things one way, he can do things a different way later on. I mean, Carlo Ancelotti was the most rigid of managers when he started out and he changed. But then I thought to myself, wait, why is he not suited for it? I mean, we've seen City play with a de facto back three, right?
Yeah, true. I mean, I guess he's maybe more wing backs and
you can sign a couple wing backs if
True,
that's the
that's
problem, right? You can. I mean, yeah, you have too many north-south wingers rather than kind of, two number 10s, if that's how you want to call it.
Yeah.
But they've also got that, right? Bernardo Silva and Foden are pretty good.
Can easily play
narrow
narrow 10s.
If you need do they have a big Scandinavian center forward who scores a lot of goals? They do. So this argument, do they have dynamic midfielders?
They can say anything
so that's
they
a
want.
nonsense, yeah?
They can say anything they want. You appoint Hugo Viana, who is Ruben Amorim's best friend, who have been such a strong partnership for many years now, very successfully for Sporting. Again, in Portugal, it doesn't mean that it would work everywhere, and especially in England, the best league in the world, anything you want. But you definitely can't tell me that it was not in the back of their mind to reunite Amorim and Viana at City next season.
I think we know it was in the back of their minds.
Yeah.
I also think they want to leave the door open for whatever Pep wants to do, which I think only makes sense.